We are going to begin the zigzag stitch, and that is made by alternating front and back stitches. Since my first stitch in the B color is going to be a back stitch, I'm dropping it to the back. I've got my A color on the hook, and I'm going to do yarn over, and my first stitch is going to be a back stitch. So I'll come through the back window, grab those top 2 loops of the A post, pull them to the back, make my double crochet, chain 1. Now I'm going to do a front stitch, which is going to come in front of the B yarn, go through those top 2 loops of the A post, double crochet, chain 1, back stitch, double crochet, chain 1, front stitch. And your back or front stitch depends on if you're going in back of or in front of the B color. Chain 1, I'm doing another back stitch, so I'm coming through that last window, grabbing those top 2 loops to the back, double crochet, chain 1, and you can call this a front or a back stitch, but I'm actually just going through the end there of that box to make sure we keep the pattern consistent. And I'll do my chain 4, pull out my loop and drop it to the back. Now my B stitch is already a back stitch, so now my next stitch is going to be a front stitch. So I yarn over, go in front of the B color into the top 2 loops, in front of the A color into the top 2 loops of my B color post, chain 1. Now I'm going to alternate by doing a back stitch, going behind the A color into the top 2 loops of the B post. I'm doing a front stitch into those top 2 loops of the B color, chain 1, another back stitch, whoops, going into those top 2 loops, working behind the A color, double crochet, chain 1, and my last front stitch is going to be in that box. And we're going to chain 4 for the turning chain. And you can kind of begin to see a little zigzag pattern is starting. Now all the following rows will be worked this way. You will always work the opposite of the stitch below. So my B color, the first stitch is a back stitch. It's behind the A color. So I'm going to drop that to the front so it's the opposite of the previous row. And I'm going to put my A color on my hook. And when we look at the A color, the first post there is in front. So I'm going to work behind, do a back stitch in that one. Chain 1, next stitch is a back stitch. It's behind the B color, so I'm going to go yarn over and do a front stitch in that post. Chain 1, again the next one is in front of in the previous row, so in this row I'm doing a back stitch. Chain 1, work in front again, that's a back stitch, and then of course your last stitch is always going into that last box. And in the A color it can be considered a front or a back stitch depending. Get some yarn here. Depending on what the pattern says. And I'm going to chain 4, pull out my loop, And now we're going to pick up our bee color, and since this is the front stitch here, you can see the next stitch in next to it was a front stitch in the previous row. So I'm going to do a back stitch in that one, chain 1. Here we had a back stitch in the previous row, so I'm doing a front stitch in there, chain 1, returning to the back stitch, chain 1, front stitch, chain 1, and this last box is going to be a back stitch. So I'm going to come through the back, pull that last box post to the back, and do my double crochet. And I will chain 4, pull out my loop, and it's ready to turn. And as you can see, it's beginning to do the zigzag. And you just continue that as long as you want your panel. And both sides of this design are the same, the zigzag. For more designs, go to interlockingcrochet.com.